Great. Good afternoon. Um, while still some more people are joining the webinar, I'm Stefan Dercon, the director for the Center of the Study of African Economies. And we're based in Oxford in the economics department. And while more people are joining, um, we're going to slowly start this webinar about our scholarship scheme for PhD programs in economics. So let me start first by explaining a little bit what the Center for the Study of African Economies is. We are a research center. We're based in the economics department of the University of Oxford. We are, as a result, primarily and almost exclusively economists working on issues to do with African economic and social development. But because we're inside the economics department in the university, we're always keen to get new talent in and get new people to join us and to join us in graduate studies. Now, there are multiple graduate programs you could do in Oxford, even some that specifically focus on development. This is not particularly what we're going to talk about here. Here we're going to talk about the flagship economics program and scholarships for it, because it's our real intention to support more African nationals to gain the required expertise at a graduate level across top universities, including ourselves. And so we want to talk to you about both the programs involved and how you can apply and the scholarships that are available. In fact, on the scholarships, I don't have to say that much. There will be at least 2 scholarships available offered by ourselves as a center, exclusively for African nationals. We will talk in a moment on other requirements, of course, but these requirements are much more linked in terms of trying to get admissions to the department MPhil or DPhil program. And we'll say more about it in a moment. But the scholarship itself will provide full funding for all the coursework period, as well as the research period. The program is structured via a master's program, the MPhil, a 2-year program that will provide all the basic coursework. And if you perform well enough, you'll have the choice to continue into the final 2 years of the program, which is actually then the research-related program on writing the DPhil, in other places sometimes called the PhD. And so we will offer funding for students that enroll in this coursework all the way to the end of their graduate studies, ending into a PhD or a DPhil, as we call it in Oxford. The scholarships will be offered in conjunction with 2 colleges. That will be Queen's College and Jesus College. But actually, again, for you, the most important thing is going to be the applications to the university, not specifically about a scholarship, but to try to get admission. Okay, so full funding is guaranteed. We will post in the chat both the website to the center in general and to the scholarships in particular. More and more information will become available now, but the main part that we want to talk to you about is to actually trying to get into the program, because the sequence is really you have to get into the program, and then as an African national, we will automatically consider you for the scholarships. Getting into the program is the hardest one, and one of the reasons why we do this webinar, and also where we will in a moment also invite question and answers and give answers to these questions. We will invite you to post Q&A in the Q&A box available on your connection. and we will try to answer any further questions you will have. But the main thing is really to understand fully from this webinar how important it is to actually really apply, understand well what are the requirements to be admitted into the program, and then what we can do further. And for that, I will want to invite my colleague, Dennis Egger, who will talk a bit more about the requirements for a good application to the MPhil-DPhil program in economics. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan, for the introduction. I'm Dennis Egger. I'm an associate professor at the economics department in Oxford, as well as tutorial fellow at Queen's, which is one of the colleges that offers a scholarship. First, I want to check, can you hear me and see me clearly? My internet connection has been a little bit spotty. You can? Okay, that's great. Please let me know if you can't. I'm in Malawi currently on field work and doing a bit of research here. And hopefully there's somebody potentially from here as well in the webinar. Okay, so basically there's 3 different programs that you can apply for in the economics department. There's the MPhil, which is sort of the master's level research master's program that takes 2 years. There's the joint MPhil-DPhil, which is a sort of 2-year MPhil plus then guaranteed progression onto the 3 to 4-year DPhil or PhD. And then there's the DPhil program directly, which is a 3 to 4-year program where you directly go to the research stage. So the first thing that I want to say is that very, very, very few people are admitted directly to the DPhil or the PhD. The reason is that the median PhD student today takes 6, sometimes even 7 years to complete their PhD research. Economics research has increased in duration, as have publication times, and so very, very few people are able to complete the research required to graduate with a DPhil from Oxford in 3 to 4 years. And so the most or more typical path for you would be to apply through the MPhil or MPhil-DPhil. This will give you both rigorous coursework at a sort of internationally excellent level, as well as a bit more time to get settled at Oxford and do first-class research. We should say that the MPhil-DPhil is a sort of joint program for the very, very top applicants to the MPhil. A select few are guaranteed the 6 to 7 year funding. So I should say 5 to 6 year funding, whereas most people will first be admitted to the MPhil with a conditional offer to then progress to the DPhil if they do really, really well in the MPhil. So that should be sort of your first port of entry, typically would be the MPhil program. An exception is if you already have a 2-year research intensive master's program from a global top economics department and a really clear pathway into research where we sort of read your application and we see that within 3 years you can create 3 very, very high quality papers. As I said, that's very rare, and so do consider very carefully if you want to go that route. Okay, so then, what does an application entail and what are we looking for? All of that information is on the scholarships website, on the CSAE website that we are going to share with you and has several components. So the first one is this sort of standardized tests requirements. So there's the GRE, there's the English language requirements, I think it's the ELTS. And those might change from year to year, so please always go back to the website to double check. But one thing that's really important is that you do these early. Many of these tests you can do multiple times, and in fact, most people do these tests multiple times in order to get the really, really high score required for us to consider you. And what do we mean by really high score? I mean, it's sort of typically in the top 5 to 10% of all the test takers. Okay, so this is a really, really high requirement. It's not a binding requirement, but it's something we look at very closely. In many countries, these are not often not offered very frequently. And sometimes there's delays, as for example happened with one applicant this year. So please take them early, prepare for them carefully, and sort of make sure that all of that is in order. Unfortunately, that's only sort of the first hurdle, and it really isn't gonna guarantee or even sort of get you much past the door, right? This is sort of something that we look at carefully, but it's not the thing that will sort of distinguish yourself. What will distinguish yourself at this stage is I guess two things. The first is very, very good quantitative mathematical background. Typically, this means some sort of proof-based coursework in a sort of mathematically challenging subject. If this were at Oxford, it would be some sort of real analysis, microeconomic analysis, or further econometrics at undergraduate level that would sort of show us that you would cope with the sort of difficult technical material at the first year level. I mentioned this because the first year of the MPhil is really technically quite rigorous, and in order for us to sort of be confident that you could pass that and then move beyond and thrive in our program, that's something we look for really, really carefully. So try to get as much preparation there as you can, and also highlight these strengths in your materials if you have them. This is an economics program. Economics is very intense on maths and on sort of analytical rigor, and so we do want to see that. The second thing then is sort of your letters, and so these are really, really, really important. And there's several ways to get good letters. Some of them might be from people at your university that you work with. Important here is that it is academic letters, right? We don't really want, unless this is in a research position, former employers, or things like that. We want your letters to comment on your suitability for an academic course, PhD level research, and also to comment on your previous experience and ability in sort of either, highly technical coursework, preferably also in terms of your promise for future research. And you can brief your letter writers to do that. Increasingly, applicants will have done some research prior to applying, either as part of an international research team, as part of a pre-doc, sort of a pre-doctoral program where you work as a research assistant for a year or two. Perhaps you've worked with a research institute or in existing research projects, or IPA or JPEL, or a survey company. So there's lots of different ways in which people now come into these kind of pathways. But such kind of experience is always extremely helpful, of course, for us in order to sort of see that you're cut out for research, and that you actually want to do that. I did one of these personally myself, a pre-doc, and it was not just good to get really good letters, but it also helps me personally solidify my choice to do a PhD, which is it's a 5-6 year commitment. And I wanted to be sure first that actually I like this lifestyle and I like research, and this is what I want to do with my life. So I just want to flag that as well. It's not a requirement at all, but it is something that we see increasingly. Then there's typically also a sort of research statement or a personal statement. I want to say at this point, when you're sort of entering the MPhil program, almost no one will in the end up doing what they write in their research statement or in their personal statement. I recently looked at mine from my MPhil time, and certainly I've never worked on that again. And so just to be clear, this is really not binding. And also it's not for you to sort of say, I want to write this paper or that paper. But it's for you to give us a sense that you're broadly and openly interested in various aspects of economics, maybe with a certain direction. Is it going to be more empirical or theoretical, or how do you think, how do you approach problems, or what drew you to economics? What kind of questions are you interested in? But signal your broad interest in economics, your enthusiasm for wanting to do research, your technical background and approach, but maybe a bit less so, a specific paper or not. That's really not sort of the most important one. Unless you have a very clear path to a project that you want to work on and you want to showcase that. But I do want to say that, if so, really describe the most ambitious and best possible paper that could ever come out of this research, Rob, right? At this point, we don't want to see what's practically feasible, but like the kind of really high level, ambitious kind of projects that you're able to think about or that you want to pursue, right? So be a bit aspirational here, rather than sort of keeping it, oh, I want to do an extension on my undergraduate thesis. That's sort of really not ambitious enough, right? We want to see really like big picture questions, big things that you grapple with. I think one thing we see often with applicants to this particular scholarship program is that you have, or you might have, particular links to getting access to data, particular knowledge of a certain research context from your country, particular perspective on research that we would value, I think, as a research community and as a scientific community beyond Oxford. And so highlighting those things are really, really great way as well to sort of say, why you stand out or why you might be a unique candidate that's suitable. There's obviously, tons of individual ways to do this, but I just wanted to highlight a few of these. I think that's pretty much it. Your package will then be assessed as every other package by a centralized admissions committee. So this will not be us here on the call. This is a committee that varies from year to year, and every application gets read carefully, ranked, and then when you are admitted to the MPhil-DPhil or the MPhil, or in rare cases to the DPhil directly, that's then when the scholarship schemes kick in and where we sort of try to see, are there some of you that might be particularly suitable to these scholarships? And I think I'll let Stefan comment on this more, but there's many other scholarships as well beyond those that you might be suitable for, and you're automatically considered for all the ones that you could possibly be eligible for. I'll leave it there, and then I go back to the questions because I see there's quite a few. But maybe Stefan, you wanna
we will do
come
for a moment, and I will in a moment I will let Karim come in, who is a student on one of our scholarships at the moment, and he can tell a little bit more about the experience. I just want to, for a moment, reiterate a few things that Dennis said. And in my experience this year, looking at the applications for the scholarships, many of them hadn't thought about it in this way. And one of the reasons of this webinar is trying to make sure people think more carefully about it. So first of all, many people left it too late so that they couldn't take any of the required tests anymore, the language test and especially the GRE test. The GRE test, as Dennis said, it's not the only thing we look at, but you need to do it well. So do it early, practice for it, work on it, and get before you take it, then do it, and then maybe take into account you may have to take it again to have a really good score, because it's an extremely useful signal, especially if your first degree or your previous degree is from an African university, that it's not entirely clear whether what Dennis was referring to earlier in terms of the quantitative background, that the quality or the level of it at which you had these courses was high enough. So we need to be able, between these bits of information, establish, can you handle the high quantitative demands of our course? Again, this is an economics program. This is not a development studies program. This is not a public policy program. This is a program that wants to train you into being a top-class economist from a top-class university. So the fact that it's going to be rigorous and quantitative, it's essential part of it. But you do need to be able to show it, and you may have still a bit of time to think carefully about it, how you show it. It links them back to this other part of, if you have research experience, it's extremely valuable, the various ways that people have. And I should also say, for people that say my application may not be strong enough now, scholarships will continue. We'll have them next year as well and the year afterwards as well. If it's worthwhile looking for good research experience, that could also help as a way of showing it, but not simply saying, I worked at that institute, but then be very clear, what did you do? What is it that makes us understand that you actually are a good potential researcher now, that that you can actually do something with it. And then maybe the final thing or the two more things quickly to pick up on, it's these references. I often read references uh, from people that have taught you that are basically incredibly bland and doesn't tell us anything. Think carefully about how you get the references, and do lean on the people that write these letters, that they matter, that they really matter. We get letters from people that have studied in American universities, from Nobel Prize winners that write it for their undergraduate economists, with the incredible glowing information that I'm sure they never got themselves, but incredibly positive ones. People encourage your reference writers to really put a little bit of effort in it, what to highlight, and especially again that you're able to do a high quality quantitative research degree, research oriented degree. That's then really important. Um, and I think I leave it there for now. If there's more questions, put them in the chat. But maybe then first, Karim, please tell us a little bit more about your experience.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, everybody. Hello, everyone. I'm Karim. I'm Moroccan. I'm a I guess second year now in the MPhil in economics. And I thought, I guess I'll start with talking about Oxford in general, and then the department and CSAE specifically. So just like Oxford, I guess it sounds like really obvious, but it is an amazing place. Like the stuff you hear about it does check out. You'll meet so many like interesting, cool, smart people. You have so many interesting conversations. I also think the city itself is like the right size, like big enough that there's plenty to do, small enough that you get the quiet if you need that. But yeah, so like just yeah, you'll have a blast, I'm sure. And then for the department, also great. I mean, it is one of the top programs in the world. There's a great spread of specialties. I saw someone in the Q&A asking, like they're doing climate change related research, and we do have plenty of people doing environmental economics, so like I wouldn't worry about that. I think Dennis, or was it Stefan, who mentioned that the first year is intense. That is true. You'll hear that a lot in the MPhil itself. But I personally thought it was like intense in a good way. Like it was really stimulating. I felt like I was learning every day. And I also think it may be slightly easier next year because like they're changing the exam structure. It used to be that you had like the exam for like the courses are over 2 terms. You'd have the exam for the both terms like at the end of it and the third term. But now apparently they're like doing it one exam per term, so that's good. But yeah, you learn a lot. It'll be really stimulating. And then for CSAE, that's like almost like the conjures up like almost images of like family more than like just a department. Rose, who's here, is one of the sweetest people in Oxford. When I got here, I just felt like really welcomed by her and like the rest of the center. It's also like I know like a lot of us we hear a lot about like departments or like research programs trying to reach out to Africa and like build those bridges. But I think like CSC is one of the like few places as far as I know that's like actually like truly leading that. There's a conference that happens here every year. I volunteer like and you can attend for free as a student if you volunteer to like some tasks to help with organizing the conference. And you're gonna meet so many African scholars there. I got lucky. I met a Moroccan scholar, fellow Moroccan, and I'm talking with him about like potentially using some data that he managed to get exclusively from the ministry back home. So it's just like really good for that, for like meeting other people who are interested in Africa and like people who come from Africa and like have stakes in the continent. Yeah, so just like apply. That was really good advice that Stefan and Dennis were giving. Like just do your best, and when you get here, I'm sure it'll be amazing. And I'm here, of course, to like answer questions when they come up if you have anything for me specifically. Yeah.
Thank you, Karim. Can I quickly jump in on a bunch of the questions that I'm seeing in the Q&A? Very many people are asking if there is waivers for the English language requirement if you have studied or grown up in an English language country. I think there are, and the website will have lots more information on that, and so don't worry about that too much. There's also questions around whether the GRE can be waived. And I encourage you to think about this a little bit differently. So yes, potentially it can be. I'm not even sure actually. And the website again will give you more information, and there's discussions on whether you have to do it or not. But I would think about it differently. The GRE is a small chance for you to show that you're excellent, right? So don't try to sort of think about how much can I not do, but think about how much can I show how good I am, right? Think about us having 1,000 applications and having to make 20 offers, and you having to sort of show us, how exceptional you are. As we said, the GRE is like not the most important way that you can do that, but it's one of the ways. And so even if maybe it's not necessarily required, consider taking it. And if you have a really, really good score, certainly submit it because we want to see it. Some people have also said that have also asked what is a really, really good score. As I said, I think typically it's in the top 5%, in the top 10% of everybody that takes the test. And the GRE will give you exactly your percentile score. And so you can sort of see what the requirements are. Again, these are not strict boundaries. It doesn't mean you shouldn't apply if you're not in the top 5, but that's roughly the kind of profile that we admit. If you're lower, right, you might have other parts of your application that are absolutely great, and we will still consider you, right? So, again, this is flexible. So I don't want you to be very discouraged if you're not there. Even if it's 10, 15th percentile, something like that, we'll definitely consider you. Or there's also maybe legitimate reasons for waiving it. Maybe it's not available in your country or things like that. And that's also totally fine. Then perhaps write that in your cover letter and let us know.
So Dennis, let me add to that as well on the GRE because it is a tricky one. And so what Dennis says is entirely right. But in my experience, the admissions committee rarely will waive it unless you have a degree from a UK university. And so it will not easily waive it. And just think of it in the way Dennis was describing it. It provides a piece of information. Actually, in most countries now on the continent, my understanding is that you can take it online as well. So that actually, as long as you have access to a good internet connection, the idea to be waived because it's not offered becomes a bit harder as well. And so you shouldn't be afraid of it, but you should practice. It's a piece of information, but at the same time, treat it as is just one piece of information. Those of you who can prove their strong quantitative skills in another way, if they then only get the 80th percentile, then it's not going to be the deciding factor. The problem is typically we need information points to assess that quantitative part, and just the idea of having taken a degree with a name that's something quantitative may not always be enough to be able to show that. So I was struck last year how few of the African applicants, some of whom I really thought made a good chance, they just hadn't taken it. And I think that's not a situation you want to be in because, you start wondering, are you not submitting it because it was really bad or whatever it is. You provide information by not taking it as well. So you should consider doing it. Language requirements they're very well defined in the application side. You have to have a look at it. Again, in the end, the university cannot make an offer. It has also something to do with visa requirements unless there is a clear proof for it. So again, be very careful. So my best advice is don't start living in a world where you hope for waivers of one or the other. You know, we have, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applications from all over the world who will do this. The waivers is not, we can't help you with that as the ones on the call, but it's not the way to think of it. If you're really confident that you're pretty good, go for it, prepare for these tests, and then take them. And yeah, I see
Um,
Dennis actively looking at the questions.
oh wait, sorry, just
I
to
have
jump in
one.
on the language tests. I managed to waive mine just by like submitting like like if you're studying in a university where the language of instruction is English, you can request a letter from your department or the admin, and you can submit it to Oxford, and usually that will be enough to waive the language requirement, not the GRE. So like maybe look into that. Maybe should an email to the department just to check. Yeah, just want to say that.
No, that seems to, it's my understanding still that generally universities that offer instruction in English can, if that's where your degree from, then you can get a waiver. And they will, yeah, there needs to be a formal process for that. But the GRE one, I would just so strongly encourage you not, because yeah. To be honest, I can't think of a real precedent where it's been waived, and they've been around for many, many years.
I wanted to live answer to a couple of types of questions in the Q&A. The first one is what kind of coursework there is, whether it will cover your field. There was one on environmental, one on econometrics, one on everything else. So this is one of the top global PhD/DPhil programs available in one of the sort of leading research departments globally in economics. And we have researchers from all the different fields. If you go to the website of the economics department, you see the different research groups that we have, and they will cover all the fields, right? From micro to macro to labor to development to environmental to behavioral to absolutely everything you could possibly want to work on. I also want to highlight that there's other departments within Oxford whose faculty you would potentially be interested in working with, particularly at the Blavatnik School of Government, at the Oxford Department for International Development, at the Martin School. But this is a program for the economics department, right? So primarily you'll be at the economics department, but you can of course talk to any other faculty at these other groups. And so before you apply, also take a moment to look at the research of people and what they're doing here at Oxford, and identify potentially a few of the people that you might be interested in working with or learning from, and the kind of research that they do. It always helps in a cover letter, a personal statement, or research statement to sort of say that you're familiar with the structure at Oxford and who you want to work with and why. Don't spend too much time on it, right? Like a short paragraph is fine, but spend time, learning about our group and who's here and hopefully, get excited about working with us and potentially even have an idea of a supervisor that you might have.
Yeah. Right. So, yeah, I was just looking at some other questions. Some have implied answer. Questions on language and on GRE will not take it again. No one we don't have credits. You don't get admitted to the second year of the MPhil. You don't. These things are not happening. If you really think you have a very strong first master's with a from a top university with a very quantitative background, you may be accepted, as Dennis said, into the DPhil program directly, but there's no such a thing as a second year entry into the into the program. Questions around the age of GREs, I don't think we worry too much about it, but well, I don't know if it's 20 years ago. I think my brain is a little bit less agile than it was 20 years ago. But if it's a few years ago, none of these things will be very important. There's also a question of, and I know that Dennis and I confused a little bit by talking about 4 years and then that the DPhil will last longer. So typically we still think in terms of we will support the people into their DPhil program. The MPhil is 2 years. How long the DPhil takes is very hard to design or decide. But there is a fee paying requirement is in total MPhil plus DPhil 4 years. So as a result, if people sometimes stay longer, but there's other sources of finance as well, but fees don't have to be paid. So that's a little bit how we're talking about it. But I can guarantee if you get in through via this program, we will try to look after you. It's not that you're going to be left hanging. But PhDs take a long time these days. You look anywhere in a top university, they're not quickly done. They're not counted in number of years in any case. They're finished when they're finished in the PhD side, so the DPhil. So that's a question that's hard to, yeah, hard thing to say. Dennis, are you looking at any other questions? Yeah.
I think I got disconnected before, so I just want to check if how much of my answer was there on the different research groups and who you want to work with. Did you get
all
most of
there,
that?
Dennis. Yeah, you're all there. Yeah.
Okay, that's fantastic. So I'm glad I answered I was able to answer those.
Well, yeah, I see there from the South African University as well a GRE waiver. Um, it's you can apply, you can ask for. You'll have to do it very explicitly. What you shouldn't do is what a lot of people seem to be doing is just apply without a GRE and then hoping that nobody will notice. That's not the one to do. But so if you have if you come with a strong MPhil program, but yeah, I still would not advise it, to be honest. It's a piece of information that's there.
I see here a question on the difference between the MSc and the MPhil.
Good.
It is right, at Oxford, we offer two programs. We offer the MPhil in economics. This is what we're talking about now. It's a 2-year research-based, very quantitatively rigorous master's program in the economics department. There's also the MSc in development economics, which is in the Oxford Department for International Development. This is a coursework-based 1-year program in development economics, particularly. It's a bit less mathematically rigorous, and it doesn't have the option for an MPhil-DPhil, where you get directly funded for the full 4 to 5 years. But it is often true that some of the very, very best students in the MSc then go on to the DPhil program as well in the economics department. So they're very different programs. One is a bit more taught. The typical profile is that people will then go into more policy or sort of policy-oriented research kind of work, but the very best then transitioning into the DPhil, whereas the MPhil is sort of very much geared to people wanting to do a PhD from the get-go. We should say that these scholarships here are for the MPhil track only. Okay, so this is what we're talking about here. The other program, the MSc in Development Economics, is a great program as well, and there's scholarships available there too, but this is not what we're talking about today, just to be clear.
And let me add to that. So the MSc program has scholarships, and again, we usually don't have enough strong African applicants, so that's an alternative route. Entry requirements are similarly rigorous, I have to admit. That actually, again, the very best, there is very little difference in the end in the profile of the applicants. It's more whether they want a more 1-year applied course that can be a final degree, or whether they want to have an MPhil 2-year course that is a part of the PhD program of the DPhil. Yeah.
Yeah. There's one very technical. Is the research statement the same as the personal statement, or do we assimilate? I'm actually not sure. I think it's the same for us. But you can include elements of
Yeah.
both of these types of statements in the same, right? So both, even if it's a research statement, we still want to hear why you're excited and what you're excited about studying, and also what makes you a strong contender and what your key sort of strengths are for actually being able to achieve that. Okay. I should also say there's tons of online resources available for what makes a good research statement. So look at the either top UK or top US or top worldwide economics departments websites. They often or some of professors I know, for example, Chris Blattman at Chicago has incredibly generous public resources on his website on how to apply for a PhD program at Chicago or at any US university. The same applies to Oxford as well. And so do read those things, and because they're really helpful in sort of uh, signaling what we are looking for. So go out on the internet and look at these resources and look at past examples, and they're all out there. Really important. These resources will then also cover the question, for example, that I see of what kind of courses will indicate a sufficient quantitative background. As I said, it's typically a sort of proof-based advanced undergraduate or even better master's level coursework in things like microanalysis, real analysis, topology, econometrics at advanced levels. So anything that sort of either uses graduate level textbooks in economics or is sort of maths that involves proving things will be helpful here. Again, this is not a must, but it's helpful, as we said, because the sort of technical requirements are pretty high. I think Fiona, who has organized this webinar for us, we can probably find some of these resources and potentially share with you these online resources on what goes into a strong application as well after the seminar, after this webinar. But yeah, that's what I would say at this point. I hope this is clear enough. But there's lots of more information out there.
Yeah, so we will also, of course, make sure that there's a recording available of this webinar. Yeah, and there's a lot of specific questions around, you know, have I done enough to be able to go to the MPhil or not? Sorry, to go straight to the DPhil rather than through the MPhil and so on. Um, um, and one of the things that I want to emphasize is to be very self-critical. You can apply for the DPhil directly if you feel like it. But make it a very clear choice that you actually are strong enough to do this. Again, for most people, and it's in line with practice in, all the top universities now, we like our people to do the coursework with us because then we know that we can build up the kind of required level. And starting from the idea of waiver, I think the attitude probably is better in terms of it will always be good to get a really strong extra training, especially if someone gives me a scholarship for it. I'll be a far better economist and I'll do a far better thesis if I have really strong training. And it seems to be, you have to put it in the mind, in your mind, what you want to achieve if you try to come to Oxford is to actually really do excellent work. And and I'm pretty sure without judging any of you personal background, just really being self-critical around whether you would be ready to apply straight for the DPhil or whether you should go for the MPhil to the DPhil route. It would be really helpful to be self-critical about it because I'm pretty sure most of you, if not all, probably this would be the route to go. Yeah.
Yeah, I will just add to that. I had done plenty of research and research assistance and a pre-doc and a master's program before joining the PhD. And again, I went through the MPhil-DPhil route, not at Oxford, this was in Berkeley, but including the coursework. And I would never have done it differently. Even the 4 or 5 years will not be enough for you to produce and finish research projects at the level required in today's job market to sort of be a successful economist for most people. So make it easier on yourself and give yourself more time and take the extra coursework.
Yeah.
If you can. There's a couple of questions on supervisors. As with most economics programs, this is very flexible, and this is not something you should think about very, very much already. Again, when you enter at the sort of MPhil level, often there's many, many paths open, and where you're going to end up going is going to be very different from where you thought you would go at the start. So you don't have to have a particular supervisor in mind. However, you should, as I already said before, look at the website of the economics department, of ODID, of these other departments that have economists. Look at their research, see if you like it, if you're excited about working with them, potentially joining their research group. So in that sense, engage with what's at Oxford and sort of show us that you're excited about coming to Oxford specifically, not just anywhere, but to work with us, because we want to be excited about you too. And so look at that. But it's totally fine at any point to later change, and the supervisor allocation is done much later anyway. So that's okay. I think the only exception to this is if you go directly to the DPhil, then you're supposed to indicate who you might want to work with, and then take that very, very seriously, and probably also make sure that the person's already aware of that. There's questions on whether the scholarship covers money for data collection and research. No, the scholarship is intended for course fees and living expenses while you're at Oxford. However, if you are part of the Oxford MPhil or DPhil programs, CSAE, as well as other parts of the university, have funding available for PhD or master's level research. Your college might have additional funding available. And once you're here, there's plenty of resources that we can point you to, and that will make you successful in going through the MPhil and DPhil program. I think Oxford is very, very good here in terms of making sure our PhD students do well and can do excellent research and have the resources to do it.
Right. So there were a couple of questions on timelines. I just want to repeat a couple of things here to be clear. You do not have to put in a separate application for the scholarship. You can just mention somewhere on the application that you put in for the MPhil-DPhil program that you would be interested in it, although we will try make sure that every single African national that applies that we actually automatically consider. That's the intention, but you could mention it somehow. The university's portal for applications is open. We do this early because the deadline for applications is still many months ahead. But we just noticed that with all these things that you need to do, which is we're getting really good references, doing some of these tests, you need to start in really good time. And that's why we're doing it now. So the timeline is, and I was actually trying to get the exact date for the closing date for applications. I think it's January, but it's definitely still many months ahead. What you should do is clicking again through the resources, what this year's exact application deadline is. But basically, don't start 3 weeks before, because then you'll never be able to get all this stuff together. If you generally want to benefit both from getting access to the MPhil program and to the scholarship, you'll have to apply by the first deadline that the MPhil program will have, and then or the DPhil program will have, and then we can consider you. Yeah.
I have a couple of questions here in the chat on grades, like prior grades. Obviously, you're all coming from very different universities and grading systems and backgrounds. But I just want to be sort of very clear, both your letters and your statements, as well as your transcript, the typical applicant will be at the very, very top of whatever like graduate level program, whatever master's program they've done before. So we often see letters like in the top 5 students I've ever taught, in the top 3% of in the top 3 students of his year, the best students of his year and the year before, things like that. And that doesn't mean that like this is essential, but this is the sort of profile of people that come to do MPhils, DPhils at Oxford. So I just want to be quite clear that if you have any such things or you've won national competitions in maths, or you've got other types of prizes, or you've won like awards or really good grades for previous research papers. You might even have publications in very, very, very good journals. All of these things are, of course, signals that we will take into account, and that will sort of make us believe that you can go on and be a sort of leading world leading economist. This is not to scare you off, but just to sort of give you a sense of the kind of things that we want to typically see. Not everybody has all of them, but you might have some. And then if you do, certainly highlight that in your application package.
Yeah.
There's a question on progressions from MPhil to DPhil. As I said, there's 2 paths. When you apply to the MPhil, a very, very select few students get directly admitted to the MPhil-DPhil because they show exceptional promise. So then they're guaranteed funding for the MPhil and the DPhil. For the majority of other students, they get admitted to and get funding for the MPhil. And then if they typically it's a distinction, or if they do extremely well in the MPhil, then they get a conditional offer to the DPhil. So if they do well in the MPhil, they can progress to the DPhil. So those are the 2 paths. So not everybody progresses automatically, but if you do really well, there is a chance that you do. And then for the very, very best, you get admitted directly for the full program.
So there's still some other questions that some become very, very specific. I want to refer you in any case to the MPhil in Economics website on the economics department that has a lot, also some more detail, bit of guidance, what grades you need to get for on what scores you need to get on GRE or whatever, and it gives you more information that will help you. I want to come back on Dennis's point on what your prior degree score should be. So usually in admissions, we're looking for what is the equivalent of a first class degree. On the university website, there will be more information of how to bring this. If you don't have a first class degree, and in some universities they may use other ways of scoring, and the university will have on the website will have translation criteria, if I may put it like this. But if you don't have it, your references will really need to be strong, also help to explain why you may not have it. Okay, I'll give an example. One African country university where in the economics department, only every 7 years a first was given, so the highest grade was given to a student. In fact, virtually all of the academics, some of them with good publications, themselves never had a first. Now, what you then need clearly is in the university explaining that it's not as it would be the case, for example, in a UK university, where usually the top 10, 15% of students will get it. So you need to, but it is important that you have a good grade before. It is important that you have a strong transcript as well. You know, we have so many applications, and we need a lot of strong points in the application, and we can't do with many weak points, and you will have to recognize that that's something you'll need to think about before applying. Yeah, and so with all the things we said, the very last question that I see coming up, no, it's not possible to go from undergrad straight to the DPhil. It just isn't here. That's what I think the essence is, that the MPhil is the standard route into the DPhil at economics in Oxford.
Yes, exactly. And I would also add to this that it's increasingly uncommon to go directly from undergrad to the MPhil-DPhil. Not to say that it doesn't happen, it still happens, but very, very often people now have research experience beforehand. So with a very strong undergrad degree, it's you should definitely apply. But again, this is a sort of preparation that takes a while, and for you to really build a strong profile, make sure that you build up to it and that you get ready to sort of really sort of excel.
So a few more quick reactions to questions. If you did a previous degree, even if it was really good, including a master's, and more than, say, 3-4 years ago, and since then you haven't really done much in research, it's usually not helping you very much. Someone asked, I'm just 2 years out. No, that's not a big deal. That's very common. People do sensible things, even though maybe what you're doing is something slightly different. Students who are still finishing a degree, they can apply. They will always get, or they most likely will only get conditional offers. Still, it will be very hard to then make it all work. And actually, usually people, very rarely these days from overseas, will get applicants who haven't fully completed, admitted before they have fully completed. Do you have to have a prior economics degree? Not necessarily. It should be a degree that has a very strong quantitative basis, very, very strong and can prove it. We like people to have some economics, but we have physicists sometimes coming. We have people doing maths or statistics. We do have people doing, highly quantitative degrees where they can really show that they're doing it. The ones that I mentioned here, for example, on business administration, the transcript would have to be incredibly clear that it is a highly quantitative degree, because it may actually become more difficult. But a finance degree, sometimes they're highly quantitative and so on. So, some of these things may or may not be sufficient, but we need to be able to assess the quantitative skills of the person. That's the single most common reason why we will where the admissions committee cannot not take it. There's a good question that there often are, there is a written work requirement. Oxford does that. And let me actually say a few words about that. It typically is a place where you can show off your research and quantitative skills. Sometimes you get advice, can you just submit something from your coursework? Maybe you did an economic essay, or you did a thesis, and you can provide, say, the quantitative part of a thesis or a large essay that you did. It can only be 2,000 words, so you can't submit your full thing. Often it's better probably then to make your own summary of it. But basically, it's a way to show off again that you understand research and that you understand quantitative methods. So the written sample is indeed required. And it can be based on something you did in your previous coursework. It can also be something else, but it's a means of showing off that if you submit something that you authored with 15 other people, it's not going to help you very much. But if you offer something, it can do it. And it's, most people can find something, but again, if there's a weakness in your application, maybe you can use this as a way of showing your strong research and quantitative skills.
Just, I think one last question that I see here is whether can be any credits that are transferred. No. The quick answer is
Very
no.
short answer. Yeah, no, absolutely not. That Oxford doesn't do that in any circumstances anywhere, so we don't do that. Yeah. So again, if I could yeah. A few of you have suggested, can I show off my quantitative skills by taking, say, an existing online course? As long as it's assessed, it provides actually really useful information. There's some universities across the world that do some of these, and a bit of hunting can find maybe one that's suitable. We have advised in the past someone to do, maybe to enroll. They were very convinced they had strong mathematical skills, but they could not prove it. They enrolled in a real analysis course and to show it. That's a very much something, yeah, we can strongly encourage you to do as a way of showing. But simply saying I've done it online, but it's not graded, unfortunately, it's not enough. I can also watch YouTube videos without concentrating, but you need to find a way that it comes with a general assessment, some test that actually assesses it properly. Okay. Right. Yeah, I think we're
Yeah, I
getting,
think we're mostly there.
yeah, exactly.
I'm just sort of going through the remaining questions, and we'll continue to answer those even when even if we didn't get around to responding. But I think we're pretty much through.
Yeah. I think I can, I'm going to post in the chat, since so many questions came on that, very explicitly. Sorry, I'm being a bit slow multitasking here. I'm going to paste the, oh, if it comes up, is the chat, I can't get my chat going. Okay, so I want to strongly encourage you to just go to on the GRE test. There's a very clear statement also on what happened to people who studied in the UK and so on GRE, on GRE waivers, on the MPhil in economics admissions page has details on the GRE requirements. Just do read this, and again I come back to this, just use the application as use any means possible to show off your strengths. And I think transcripts of a GRE and is definitely part of this process. So I think, well, we've done an hour. We've hopefully asked a lot of questions. There will be hopefully most of them answered. You know, I hope many of you will apply. It's rare these days to, and especially in the UK, to get full scholarships for this kind of thing. We really want to get the best amongst you to become our students and to work with you, because we believe that many of you have enormous talents, and we would really look forward to having you here in Oxford. As Karim also implied, it's a great place to be. It's a great university to study, and it can set you up for a great future. But if you do apply, don't underestimate the time it will take to apply properly and to do it well. And so we look forward to seeing more applications in the future.
Yes, thank you all for the great questions. I hope we were able to answer them. This has been fun, and really looking forward to reading all your applications and hopefully having some of you join us.
Very good.
Good luck, everyone.
Bye.
Good luck. Bye bye.